Hermetic Astrology. The precession cycles of the fixed stars and individual and world events. Giacomo Albano. Introduction. For some strange reason, the astrological techniques that we have inherited from tradition are not the most suitable for explaining and predicting events, because they actually only catch the last links in a chain of celestial causes that underlie them. In fact, the primary causes of all events are always found only in the eighth sphere. That is, in the heavens of the constellations and fixed stars, as is normal according to traditional Aristotelian cosmology, which establishes a precise hierarchy among the heavens. Every event has, and can only have, its first cause in the highest sphere, and therefore the 7 planets can only activate and manifest stellar archetypes in a certain way. It is thus necessary to adapt the techniques to reflect this hierarchical order. In this way, forecasts can also become more accurate and reliable. And it also finally becomes possible to distinguish momentous events from minor ones. This book summarizes the main results of the author's research in the field of stellar astrology. It begins with 3 essays illustrating the various astrological uses of methods based on the maximum and minimum declination reached by each star during the precession cycle. From Egyptian archaeoastronomy to world and individual astrology, it will show how and why these star stopping points, whose astrological efficacy lasts some 26,000 years, can be activated at any time by other stars or planets. The geometric patterns formed by the stars at their lower and upper stopping points and their subsequent activations represent the true and hidden root cause of most events, and not only world events. The following essays explain the concepts of generative constellation, mother star and manifestation constellation. It is explained how to identify them in the birth chart and how to use them in astrological practice. The clearest formulation of the concept of the mother star is found in Plato, who states in the Timaeus that the demiurge created a number of souls equal to the number of stars and distributed them, each soul in its own star. Another lengthy essay is devoted to the application of star astrology techniques in the medical field. It summarizes the concepts explained more fully in my book Medical Stellar Astrology. Careful observation shows that even anticia between a planet and a star, and even those between 2 stars, have significant astrological effects. In world astrology, they are often decisive in explaining the various events of history in the light of the fixed stars. Indeed, important events usually take place when an antisign between 2 stars is perfected. The same is true when 2 stars perfect an equidistance based on their right ascension, and not on their longitude, from the solstitial or equinoctial collier. I then dedicated an important essay to the uses of these methods, showing how these perfect equidistances by longitude or right ascension represent other important hidden factors of not only world events but also individual ones. In another article, I present some techniques aimed at perfecting traditional local space astrology and making it a very efficient and helpful tool with extraordinary applications, especially from an elective point of view. All these techniques can be applied to both the natal chart and the solar returns. They are made possible by the use of software such as Stellarium and Google Earth Pro. One of the novelties lies in considering not only the position of the stars and planets at the time of birth, but also their azimuth of rising and setting on the day of birth. Another new development is the use of the encadrements technique. Just as in traditional astrology, events are indicated by aspects between the stars, in local space astrology some equidistant combinations are very effective. They concentrate the combined influence of some stars on a particular direction. This procedure is similar to that of encadement based on equidistance. It is necessary for the three stars to be equidistant from each other in azimuth. Among the most powerful of these encadements are those formed with the azimuth of rising or setting of the solstices or lunistices. We then deal with magical angular distances. Also very significant in this new astrology of local space. This is followed by two essays that solve the age-old problem of the longitude of places on a stellar basis. We shall see that here again the stars are decisive and that the problem would be completely unsolvable without taking into account their precession cycle. In particular, it is the cycle of the brightest star in the sky, Sirius. We will see how and why the meridian passing through the Great Pyramid of Giza must be considered the fundamental meridian. And we will also explain why this has much to do with the precession cycle of Sirius, which was perfectly limit star at Giza when it reached its minimum declination. However, there is more than just a stellar factor, because the erection of this monument, which is the only one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world still standing, and which has remained the tallest building in the world for millennia, also contributed decisively to making the meridian fundamental, the one passing through the Great Pyramid. It should be remembered that the ancient monuments, and particularly the Egyptian ones, were not mere works of embellishment or celebration of the earthly might of Pharaoh or any other king. They served precisely to establish on earth an abode for heavenly forces and to create very definite connections between heaven and earth. So they had a very definite magical effect. In these essays devoted to the Giza meridian, we will enrich our stellar techniques with 2 new methods that use this fundamental meridian in the astrology of local space, both world and individual. Another essay is devoted to what I call the Great Encadement by Declination, because it involves some of the brightest stars in the firmament. Also making this stellar scheme of supreme importance is the fact that all the stars in question are at the declination values of 30, 60 and 90 degrees, i.e. the sacred angles of Pythagoreanism that are the basis for constructing the main types of regular triangles, and all of which are divisors of 360. There is then an essay in which we explain the astronomical significance of the 6-point star, also known as the Star of David or Solomon's Seal. We will see that the Star of David is also, literally, a very specific star, which in Jewish tradition is the symbol of the house of David and the tribe of Judah. We will look at what are the astronomical peculiarities of this star in Jerusalem when it was at its lowest stopping point, lowest declination. And finally the fundamental essay in which we explain what a stargate is and how it opens from an astrological point of view. These are channels of communication between heaven and earth, some of them universal, others individual. We could define an individual stargate as a particular point in time and space where our illusory perception based on the 5 senses and the most common associations of ideas takes a step back and allows us to perceive things in a different way. This happens on the one hand because of the occurrence of a series of particularly perfect stellar and planetary geometries. That is, because of a certain magical combination of stars and planets that are also among the strongest and most effective stars in its individual microcosm. By studying these exceptional cases in this essay, the astrological conditions that favor these kinds of events are recognized. And, of course, once they are identified, you can act in your election to prepare everything in the best possible way. If you practice an analytical and hermetic astrology such as the one outlined in my last books, you can understand with dazzling evidence that the stars are not limited to exert a generic influence on this earth, being rather a precise and accurate mirroring, down to the smallest details, of every earthly event. The goal of the Hermeticist is to discover the secret ties that bind earthly aspects both to each other and to their corresponding celestial counterparts. This book is dedicated to English-speaking readers who cannot directly access in Italian the much more extensive works I have devoted to each of these topics. It is my hope that the essays therein will be sufficient to stimulate research, reflection and further study of these subjects that lay the foundations of a new astrology, which is objectively able to provide an answer to everything that cannot be explained by ordinary techniques, whether classical or modern. Table of Contents: Ancient Egypt and the Stars. Archaeoastronomical evidence of a secret sacred astronomy. The extreme declinations of the stars in world astrology. Earthly stars. The cycles of the stars in natal astrology. The generative constellation and the mother star in the natal chart. The manifestation constellation in the natal chart. The Principles of Medical Stellar Astrology, Part 1. The Principles of Medical Stellar Astrology, Part 2. Antisha and other forms of equidistance between stars and between planets and stars towards a new local space astrology. The Great Encadement by Declination. Giza, the first meridian of the world. Another technique for using the meridian passing through the Great Pyramid.